Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to another One Make series, and this time it's, of course, the turn of the Porsche 992 GT3 Cup. Bathurst, also known as Mount Panorama in New South Wales, plays host to the final round today, just over 6.2 kilometres in length with a whopping 23 turns, and technically is deemed a street circuit. I'm John Dalton, your lead commentator for tonight. Alongside me, Jesse Lee, and behind the cameras, as always, is Stewie. And of course, a big hello to our live stewards. Welcome, everyone.
G'day everybody, and I'll tell you something, John Dalton has bailed out of the joke we were going to do tonight, but I haven't. I'm going to do it anyway because Stewie requested it, and I always listen to me broadcaster. Hello everybody, welcome to the mountain. John, where's your accent?
I decided against that one, but yeah, of course we are down under today in Bathurst, also known as Mount Panorama. As you come over the mountain, of course, Nico Kumpu currently for rebound racing on his outlap, and I don't think I can continue this up much longer without cracking a smile. But of course, no tyre warmers in the Cup cars tonight, and every driver trying to generate as much heat as possible. We saw, of course, Christian Lindgren coming out of the pits, weaving all the way down the mountain straight before he got to, of course, Griffin's Bend at the end. And first two cars on the road will be Nico Kumpu and Christian Lindgren. Both drivers looking very quick in practice so far. Of course, championship is still wide open, all bar the top spot, of course, in Pro that has been dominated by Jeffrey Miguel Renault Ritchie. Of course, last time out, netting a win with Nikolai Polyakov and Nick Babin just behind them. Silver, of course, won by Jake Boswell, followed by Benjamin Schumann and Raphael Huell. Roscam took honours from Kevin Boss and Mike Redford. And also a very interesting point Tim Ireland mentioned to me last night, Jesse, is that Raphael Huell is leading overall, but in Silver Cup, Dvorak and Menez Rodriguez is beating him to the silver title. So, of course, very interesting, and take a full look at championship standings later on tonight.
Yeah, and I would just like to apologize to the entire continent of Australia and all of its people for that. We were bet that we would or wouldn't bet earlier on. Grips on you. I want my $5. So moving swiftly along, get into the qualifying session. Track that doesn't really need any introduction, but we'll give it one anyway. Turn number one, Hell Corner. That's HE double hockey sticks. And if you've ever wondered why it's called Hell Corner, all you need to do is watch the start of any race around this particular joint. Up turn two and into the more technical section of the racetrack. It's a cambered right-hander that you can get very wrong in these cars. In fact, a huge dose of opposite lock and steer from Nico Kumpu coming through the cutting, which is actually a two apex corner. You want to get as close to the wall here, but you don't want to get as close to the wall right here. You want to go across the line, and without a sighted sort of run, you're going nearly full speed into the park section. Many parks, you have your Reeds, you have your McPhillamys, you can have your pick, but one thing you don't want to pick up is the wall through there. And of course, the very lovely skyline section of the racetrack, probably the most famous part here. Really difficult to get the car set under braking. The rear end of these cars particularly want to get all out of sorts, and through the S's now and into the Forest elbow turn. Many passing opportunities will be made, will be set up here. More races will be dashed into that corner as well, sliding through the braking zone. Now down the Conrad Straight, so named because, well, you would blow a Conrad revving your car to the absolute maximum back in the day. No longer an issue today with electronic rev limiters, but still so named because you're wringing every bit of performance out as you run down into the chase. You want to talk about a passing zone? This one is it, folks at home. This is the passing zone you're looking for. Almost all the passes will be made, or at least attempted, through that section. Final turn is Murray's, so named after the famous individual, and across the line, the tiny pit straight here that connects two massive straights. Kumpu will come across the line and will briefly have the quickest lap before the 48 of Lindgren comes across to set the outright fastest time. The times are tumbling right now.
Yeah, times are tumbling indeed. Miguel Martins next across the line with the fastest time. Menez Rodriguez looking very competitive as well. Joe Dorber, 2.3 seconds to the good. Callum Kerrigan, 2.5 seconds off top time. And Richard Hutchings, 3 seconds back, of course, in the field. John Eraser up there as well, 1.1 seconds to the good. So he's looking very competitive in the early stages of the qualifying today. And just want to touch on Nico Kumpu's lap, even though, of course, it wasn't a top time, should we say, still nearly a second off the time of Miguel Martins. Just the amount of work and effort that was going in to keep the car on the straight and narrow, and of course keep it out of the wall. You can see Miguel Martins there sliding out of the cutting. We're going to be seeing a lot of that tonight as he rounds through, of course, all the parks, through Quarry Corner, Reed Park, Spillerman Park, and of course McPhillamy at the end. It's a very hard lap in a GT3 car. We were here, of course, Jesse, me and you, just for the World Tour not so long ago, and even watching a GT3 car go around, of course, with additional grip and downforce that those generate compared to a cup car, it's still a hard drive even in a GT3 car. Miguel Martins there kissing the wall on the descent through Skyline, the S's, and the Dipper. Unfortunately, that's probably not going to be the best for his time, but it's a very tricky lap, and we said it in the World Tour that it's going to be a race of attrition tonight, I think, Jesse. Jesse seems to have vacated the booth very briefly. We'll keep talking, of course. Miguel Martins down the Commonwealth Straight, as Jesse said earlier, of course, where cars back in the day used to blow engines, but again, not so much the problem now. 285 kilometers an hour we saw on the speedo for Nico Kumpu before he slammed on the brakes for the chase. So it's going to be a very hotly contested piece of tarmac this afternoon. And Nico Kumpu now on his next lap comes across the line. Will he beat his previous time? And he does, up into P2, not too far off the top time. Ordonez now with the top time to his name, 203.577. Nico Kumpu next in line. Miguel Martins, of course, been shuffled down to P3. Christian Lindgren still yet to improve up. Joe Dorber, meanwhile, looks to improve on his P12, and he does so all the way up into P3. So Rebound Racing looking very confident this evening, Jesse.
Yeah, they certainly are, and it's very interesting to see just what cars are going to be outstanding here. We've been to a variety of different racetracks, haven't we, John, throughout this championship? Today might just be the toughest test. Why not save it for last? We've had the high-speed tracks with the fast-flowing corners. We've had the mixed conditions. Obviously, we started with Barcelona, which was a mix of the two. The track itself was enough to test the drivers. Today, though, this is going to be one of those days where in a car like this, you're always racing the racetrack, right? Today, more so than not. Qualifying absolutely at a premium. Whoever qualifies first here, they might just win by default since it's so hard to pass. And most people will be trying to control their car rather than race the competition.
Yeah, I said it briefly when you stepped out of the booth. Of course, we were here for the World Tour just a few weeks ago watching the GT3 cars go around, of course, with additional aero that keeps them stuck to the ground. It makes it a little bit easier than a cup car. Of course, you've got this massive rear wing hanging over the rear end with a diffuser underneath it and a tiny splitter at the front. It doesn't generate a lot of aero in comparison to Martin Foster, one of your first cars, hard into the wall tonight. I'm sure we're going to see many more cars to do that. And I was saying that, of course, it's going to be a race of attrition, much like the World Tour was.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those, certainly. And you just worry about that. If it can happen to Foster, it can happen to anybody. Just because any of these drivers are up at the sharp end of the grid, that does not guarantee safety. In fact, I would say quite the opposite of that. The ones at the front of the grid are the ones pushing it the most. Whether it looks like they are or not, they're the ones testing the limits of the racetrack. They're testing the limits of the 992 Porsche Cup car, and they're going to be testing walls here. And what the common thread between all the series, doesn't matter if it's a Cup car, a GT4, a GT3, nobody here is safe. As Miguel Martins for DCC Motorsport goes P2, 203.780. That is really good, these 3-second laps. There are some folks in GT3s that struggle to do threes around here. That is incredible.
Yeah, it just proves, of course, how quick these drivers are in the pro category. And again, we say it all the time about the silvers, don't we? You shouldn't underestimate a silver driver, as Miguel Martins, again, is putting in some fantastic lap times this evening and not always been at the top end of the field, but he certainly gelled with Bathurst in a big moment already coming out of Griffin's Bend. Managed to hold it as the pendulum effect of the Porsche kicked in, swung in one way, swung in back the other, and was able to get it under control. So going to see a lot more of that, I hope, tonight. And going to be a masterclass in how to manage the car through the mountain. Certainly keep it out of the walls, keep it sideways, but always in control. Christian Lindgren across the top of the mountain now as we ride on board with him from the passenger seat as he descends through Skyline, the S's, and of course the Dipper. You've got to keep it very close to the wall on the left to try and maximize the run out of the corner before we get down, of course, to the bottom of the mountain, nearly at the forest's elbow. Again, keeping it very tight to the wall. Got to nail the throttle as soon as you can, but of course keep it out of that exit wall so easy to graze along there. And then, of course, we begin the big long run down the Conrod Straight towards the chase. And it's going to be a very hotly contested piece of tarmac this afternoon, I feel, Jesse. You know, drivers slipstreaming down here, trying to get the lunge through the kink. Of course, the right-hander of the chase, the car's very bumpy through there. Got to keep it under control. And, of course, if you go side by side with somebody, it could be enough to make them back out of a move if they're not feeling all too brave. Christian Lindgren electing to select second gear out of the chase, and down towards Murray's Corner he goes. Noticed earlier Nico Kumpu choosing third gear out of the chase to, of course, keep the revs down a little bit and try and get a better drive off the corner. And Christian Lindgren across the line is an improvement, but no improvement on grid position. Menes Rodriguez only just a smidge ahead before he can, of course, take another spot away.
Yeah, you talk about so many moves being made down the Conrad Straight, and that all really starts with how you take the Forest Elbow. And if you're defending from somebody, you might automatically get a worse sort of exit from Elbow, which will affect you the entire way down Conrad and set you up for the chase. These cars tend to draft sort of okay as well. They're not particularly horrible that way, and especially since you're all in the same car, you can sort of exploit that extra bit. You got to be within 3/4 of a second to really make that draft work, and obviously the closer you get, the better it is. But you will see some moves set up, facilitated through that section. You're also going to see some cars get it quite wrong well through that section. So we'll see how it gets on in the race. You've already seen several cars struggling just to go around here by themselves. Heading on to the point that you made, John, is very astute. Doesn't matter what class you're in today, you're all in one class in my mind, and that's the survival class.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, race of attrition. We saw some big moments already in qualifying. That's going to become even harder, of course, once everybody gets into the pack mentality of, you know, the one make series. It's very tricky indeed. The new name on the grid for tonight, Matthew Malcolm. We've not seen him yet this season, down in the AM class in the number 199. No team name, unfortunately, on that car. Though fantastic in-game livery, runs very wide out of the chase, all over the exit curve, manages to keep it pinned and keep his throttle in, and runs down into Murray's Corner and comes towards the line. P17 currently over the line he goes. No improvement to be had overall on grid position there. The lap may have been invalidated by the run out of the chase. Meanwhile, this man here, of course, Menes Rodriguez, we saw him at Monza, if you cast your mind back, Jesse, to the absolute defense he put up by trimming all of the wing out of the car. Was super fast down the start finish straight through the Curva Grande, got to the few twisty bits of Monza, and really struggled to fend off cars. But again, got to the straights, and people even in slipstreams, Jesse, weren't touching this man. So wondering if he's going to employ a similar setup on the 464 tonight.
Wonder as well, and we see that some of the names have changed up at the front of this field, and I think we were sort of told this before. You do not see Reno Ritchie near the front of this field. That's unusual, isn't it? But we have a reasonable explanation for that. They mentioned that they may, because of the championship being well and truly out of reach of anybody else in the pro category, they might try to go from last to first. And of any track that you're trying to do that, this would absolutely be the hardest to do. You would hope they wouldn't get themselves into trouble with the other cars and then run risk of some sort of disqualification, or just run risk of DNFing in what should be a victory lap of sorts. Menes Rodriguez for Sim Brothers does come across the line and slots themselves into P2. 1 minute 20 left to go. They will have another lap if they want it, but I don't think Menes Rodriguez is going to do another lap. All she wrote, and they're back in the pit lane, and so is Ordonez at the front of this field, the top two. Stopping qualifying slightly early here. Nearly everybody else still going, pressing on.
Yeah, of course, no tire blankets in the Cup cars, so you have to generate your heat over a couple of laps before you do reach that magic kind of spot for the Pirelli tires. Matthew Malcolm on board with him, currently on the splitter cam, running through Murray's Corner, of course, up to the start-finish line. Does improve up into P14, so jumped himself ahead of Dvorak and Redford, and of course Kevin Boss in the AM category. Roman Geikin will go for another lap. He's got enough in the tank, hopefully, to go one more. Currently down in P10. Nico Kumpu, of course, coming up on a little bit of traffic at the moment. He's ahead of Joe Dorber, his teammate just behind there in the 777. Raphael Huell has snuck up into P5. He was sat on the board without a time all the way down the back of the grid. So looking very strong for him as well. We round into the last corner. Of course, rebound racing. The clock is ticking down and down. Will Nico Kumpu get another lap? And I think he's just about going to sneak another one. P3 currently on the board. He has some traffic ahead of him. They're going to have to be careful. When you're not seeing triple, that is in fact 3 rebound racing cars. I believe Ross Cam, Joe Dorba, and Nico Kumpu all running in the same livery. So that's going to be interesting for us up here in the booth. And speaking of team liveries, RPMS Simsport, again with a strong showing in this championship. Richard Phillips currently on board with down the Comrade straight, of course, down the compression, up the other side, under the Pirelli Bridge, where we saw quite a nasty accident in the World Tour, which changed the head of the race with some lap traffic there through the bumpy section of the chase. Looks very flat in the RPMS car compared to a few of the others, so maybe they've got their damper settings really dialed in at the moment. Through the chase they go. Fantastic run. Out looks very clean, very minimal opposite lock down to Morris corner, and this will of course be the last lap for Richard Phillips, number 22 RPMS Simsport. Big dab of opposite lock as he comes out the last corner, and a small improvement up into P7. Joe Dorba separates him from his next rivals. Meanwhile, Mike Redford across the line, P17 to P10. That's a fantastic improvement just behind
Oh, and he
Les
knows it too.
Stevenson. He knows what he's done there, Jesse, very much so. And Jake Boswell, again, the man last time out, took the race win for silver. Honours a very wet Paul Ricard. So Jake's going to be absolutely elated after that. It's going to be a massive confidence boost, of course, for the number 47 driver. And again, another driver that has hit the clock at 0. So no more laps for Jake Boswell. Will he improve from P12? Currently does jump up into P8, just behind Richard Phillips. So silver guys tonight, Jesse, giving the field a run for their money.
Certainly are. We've seen that throughout this series. Some of the silver guys up there competing at a very high level, and sort of what a lot of people always Callum Kerrigan was improving, but now they have all but destroyed their lap and partly destroyed the race car as well. They completely messed up the chase. John Razor goes P13 on the last ditch effort there, and that will just about conclude qualifying. Razor does come across the line and improve their position a little bit further up, with only Mike Redford leading AMCAR will take the honors. Well, it's going to be pro and silver sharing the front row here tonight. Ordonez and Minez Rodriguez. Ordonez is first and second sector. That's what into sector times me. Nico Kumpu, the quickest third sector of all. Minez Rodriguez doesn't have claim to any of that, but was consistent and quick enough through all 3 sectors to take away P2. It was a 203.065, good enough for pole. 0.522 for Minez Rodriguez. Get behind them, Kumpu second in pro, Martins second in silver, Huel third in silver. We're going to go all the way back to 6th place to Joe Dauber for 3rd place in that pro category. But look at Mike Redford, quickest of all in their class. Kevin Boss at the buzzer takes 2nd place away in that class, and Roskam in 3rd. To the field here. Still so many cars in the finale here today. So used, aren't we, John, to having some sort of fall off in these championships? We have had some, admittedly, but 25 plus cars all here for the finale, including your pro champion-elect, Miguel Reno Ritchie, who will start from near the back.
Yeah, it's fantastic to see, of course, such longevity in a championship. And I think it's just been so close on points for certain people that it's been worth sticking around, of course, to have that claim to fame when the season does round out. And we're going to have a look through here at the championship standings. Of course, this will be done by category. We do, of course, as well have an overall championship points, which we touched on earlier. But from the top, of course, Miguel Reno Ritchie will walk away from tonight's race, the championship winner on 285 points. Klaus Neiring on 194, and Nick Babin tied with Christian Lindgren on 167. Nico Kumpu on 132, Juan Pablo Ordonez on 106, Joe Dorba on 88, Polyakov from the one event he's actually attended in this championship with 58 points, Ollie Brocklehurst with 40, and everybody else, unfortunately, in pro has signed out and will take no further part in the scoring, including Jordan Daly at the bottom, and of course, Shelgren and Kevin Tutik on page 2. Running into silver, of course, Menez Rodriguez at the helm, currently on 216. Wojciech Dvorak on 188, Raphael Huel on 182, and Richard Phillips just behind on 171. Matthew Kingston Lee, the greatest surname in sim racing, on 158. Jake Boswell on 142. John Eraser 128, and just behind Yamanzo on 118. Roman Geikin with a very small margin of 115, and then Miguel Martins just behind Geikin, rounding out your top 10 in silver. So silver still looking very close across the board. Rounding on to page two, of course, Benjamin Schumann on 111 and Les Stevenson on 99. Unfortunately, everybody else has signed out, including Andy Boardman, Balinga, Gajda, and Santima will take no further part in the scoring of the championship. And last but not least, of course, the AM Championship. Mike Redford with a very strong lead at the top, 246 points. Tim Ireland with 201. Martin Foster with 190 and 10 points behind Richard Hutchins on 180. So an all British kind of top four at the moment. Ibiza Racer with 152. Thibart Roscam with 138. Kevin Boss on 111. Callum Kerrigan just behind on 92. And the other of the Dvoraks, Vit Dvorak this time on 85. Matthew Malcolm, of course, the new sign up to the championship tonight, yet to score points. So see how he runs tonight. And I feel there is no second page for the AM drivers, if my memory serves me correctly. But I am being embarrassed now with Vilas Mas, unfortunately, signing out, taking no further part in the championship. That, of course, rounds out your championship standings for tonight. We do, of course, as well have an overall championship, which we briefly touched on in the qualifying, of course, as well as the should we say the split categories. We also do have the overall standings, which is again something that we'll discuss later on. But of course, for tonight, we are getting ready to grid up. It's going to be a very compacted start, I feel, Jesse. Of course, one make racing. It's very tricky to get the advantage, should we say, over your opponent. You know, it's very small margins. Everybody's got equal horsepower, roughly the same fuel load. Setup tweaks may differ here and there, but when you boil it down to everything, you're in the same car, on the same bit of track, on the same tire compound. So, you know, it's going to get pretty congested, I feel, by the time we reach turn two.
Normally in a car like this and in a race series like this, what you're looking for is to maximize your effort while also exploiting other people's weaknesses, other people's mistakes. You're not going to be afforded any sort of manufacturer difference that you can exploit consistently throughout the race. So it's all on you to identify your opponent's weaknesses, attack whatever weakness that is. You're hoping whatever their weakness is a strength of yours. You're going to have to take runs. This is the same thing we've been talking about all season. You've got to take every run that you get simply because in match machinery, you don't know when you'll get another one. And that has led to incidents and contact here. The difference is we are at the mountain, Mount Panorama, Bathurst, Australia. It's different. Everybody that comes here does one thing. You race the racetrack. You're taught to race the racetrack. You're taught to not make moves on top of the mountain. You're taught to be patient. That is completely the opposite of how this entire series has been ran. Will we see any sort of major incident here today, or will they all be quite calm here at the finale, just trying to get to the championship? I don't know either way. It's going to be a good race. I can guarantee that. And by the way, for one final time in this Porsche Cup Championship, apologies to the island nation of Aruba and Jeffrey Miguel Reno Ritchie. We obviously don't have his flag from his nation on the thing. One can only assume that when we made up all those flags for our graphics package, Aruba wasn't on the list of countries where we assumed we would see sim racing from. But that's not an excuse as more as it is an explanation. So apologies to Aruba.
Yeah, we really need to get the Aruba flag fixed, I guess. But it just proves, of
we won't
course,
make that mistake next year. I guarantee that.
it just proves, of course, how far sim racing has reached. You know, all corners of the globe, and fantastic to see everybody getting involved, no matter where you are. There's something for everyone in the world of sim racing, and we do have an Aruba flag on the website, I believe, Jesse Lee. So I mean, 1 out of 2 ain't bad, right? It's we're nearly there.
We do have one. If you visit racerci.com and you go to this championship, there is an Aruba flag there. We just, in our broadcasting graphics packages, we do not have that particular flag, and it's a really boring explanation of how our system works, but basically put in there by default. And but when there's not one, it leaves a blank space, just like Taylor Swift sung a song about once. That's exactly what's happened to Reno Ritchie. But he's from Aruba, and that is I got a question for you while we're talking about the champion-elect, John. He's starting from the back, and I mean all the way in the back. We got 25 cars on track. How far up do you reckon he gets in an hour?
I'm saying inside the top 10 minimum. I mean, Nick Babin is, of course, down the back with him. We know those two are friends from when, of course, Nick Babin ran out of fuel at Monza and ended up nearly getting pushed to the finish line by Miguel Renault Ricci before, of course, I think it was Ordonez nearly caught them both. And, of course, Miguel Renault Ricci left him high and dry. And at that point, of course, Wojciech Dvorak had to then push Nick Babin to the line in order to secure a position 3, I think it was, for Nick Babin in Monza. So they could end up in their own little battle. Again, they could end up tripping over slower cars down the grid. They do have to take some care, of course. They do have a big time split across the board here in the Porsche Cup, and certainly the AM drivers are going to be very cautious for their first time over the mountain. So, you know, if anything, I think they'll be the undoing of their own, you know, last to first challenge, should we say.
Well, that's going to be very interesting indeed to see how it all comes to pass. I have been slid a piece of information that appeared to be Menez Rodriguez saying that they're not feeling well, and I could be wrong about that, but we'll follow up on that when we get a moment. But here's that Menez Rodriguez not feeling well today, so that will remove that car, and it will be Ordonez and Nico Kumpu on your front row here. It'll be Miguel Martins and Rafael Huel, the top two in the silver class now. We hope Menez Rodriguez feels better. And, well, it's unfortunate. Tried it, made a run of it here, unable to start this race.
Yeah, very unfortunate indeed, and our best condolences, of course, to Menez Rodriguez. We hope for a speedy recovery. Maybe he might even come through in the race later on. But a drive-through already for Ordonez. I could tell he was far too far forward when the green flag dropped, and that is the undoing of the 2-2-1. So he's going to have to serve that through the pit lane and shuffle himself to the back, and that's going to be another last-to-first challenge on our hands today. So have to keep an eye out on Ordonez's 2-2-1. But, of course, down Mountain Straight we go. 2 wide in the background in some places, nearly 3 wide at some points, and hopefully everybody keeps it clean. But the outside of turn 2 is not where you want to be. Of course, the road is cambered, kind of, you know, negatively in the way. Out wide, you need the inside line to suck the car around and keep all of the grip, especially on these cold Pirelli tires. But of course, through the cutting, this is the typical pinch point where we see an accident, and there is one in the background. There's a yellow car involved. There's a couple of AMs shunted in there as well. Not going to make assumptions on who that is, but maybe Bit Dvorak, of course, in the yellow Porsche car. I think Roman Gaikin was in a yellow car tonight as well. So a couple of speculation names there. We'll have to catch a replay later on the broadcast tool. But Christian Lindgren on the back of Joe Dorber. He wants to get progress through the top of the mountain, and everybody single files. They begin the descent through, of course, Skyline, the S's, through the Dipper. As the floor kind of falls away from you, the car compresses very hard as you land and get it settled before flicking it the other way again. As we come into the Forest Elbow, Christian Lindgren, of course, lurking in the background here for the first run down the Conrad Straight. We're going to see how powerful the slipstream is. I think Christian Lindgren isn't close enough to get the full potential of it, but he'll still be catching a small wake of the draft of Joe Dorber off the back of that rear wing, and doesn't look like it's enough to close up. Meanwhile, Roskam in the back in the other rebound racing car. Roman Gaikin, can confirm, has got through the cutting, so he wasn't involved in the incident, and into the chase for the first time. No moves to be made at the moment. I think everybody's going to be feeling each other out, Jesse, seeing where they stand with their competitors, and then firing moves later on in the race. Nick Babin looks like he was caught up in the incident. Big front end damage on the number 41, and Menez Rodriguez, feeling better, has managed to take the start. He's already up into P22, Jesse.
Oh, but something really horrible has happened to Jeffrey Miguel Reno Ricci, and I wonder, were they caught up into that incident originally? Oh, and it's going to be even worse. It's going to be a downtown incident there. João Manso unsighted, I guess, the cruise missile that was Reno Ricci, and this is the initial incident. You can see the 911 getting piled into, many other cars also involved. Not quite enough for a full race restart. So all those cars involved, and now João Manso gets heavily involved as well. You would have to imagine suspension or something broke on Reno Ricci's car, because that was just a cruise missile, and then an RKO out of nowhere. from Zhao, and that's how that race ends for both of those. Nick Babin into the pit lane, Reno Ritchie into the pit lane, more so besides. So it might not be a top 10 for your champion-elect here today. Nico Kumpu leads the race. The penalty for Ordonez being served. They're out into the field again. Theobald Roskam took the lead in AM over Mike Redford. A little bit of contact there, and that is indeed the pass.
Yeah, that was on the opening lap, I believe. That's between Roskam and Geiken. So two cars, of course, separate classes. Geiken in silver and Roskam in the AM class, denoted, of course, by the different color number boards. But Roskam wants this position back. He's not going to take it lying down, side by side, over the rise, down the Conrad Straight. Fantastic scenes from the helicopter cam. We've even got a little bit of John Eraser in front, side by side through the chase. Big bump on the inside. See Geiken's front end lift up, but Roskam has the inside line into the chase. Both drawing up in time. It looks like Geiken nearly ran himself a little bit wide. Moved, signed, sealed, and delivered. Roskam back into P10. Meanwhile, we're going to have a race replay here. This is Renault Ritchie. Small contact again. Callum Kerrigan, I think, involved in that one. And, of course, I think
Callum was already damaged. Callum had crashed it somewhere between Sunset and the S's. And the cars behind obviously didn't know. Callum was trying to keep as far to the left as possible. Reno Ritchie was trying to make a pass on another car. Ends up leaving contact there. It's absolutely horrible situation. It's not an uncommon situation, to say the least, around this racetrack, but just incredible stuff. Kevin Boss, by the way, is up into P2 in the AM class. They've got by Mike Redford. Redford, who qualified P1, falling down the AM order. Here's Richard Phillips through the cutting. A little bit of a tap right there.
Yeah, a little bit of a hip and shoulder check from Jake Boswell there on the opening lap. Again, you can tell by how everybody's kind of condensed up, and the gap certainly has opened up between a lot of the pack, of course, with the big incident at the back of the field. We're going to see some race replays yet, and this could be it. Vic Dvorak, of course, coming into the cutting. Looks like he got it a little bit wrong.
Wow.
Nearly into the back of Kingston Lee. Fired himself into the outside wall. A couple of RPMS cars caught up in there, of course. Renault Ritchie, Babin, I think, of course, they started from the back. Foster was involved, I believe, and Malcolm as well. He's got some front end damage at the moment, but meanwhile, this man here, Nico Kumpu, managed to get out cleanly, and he is at the head of the field. 2 seconds to the good nearly on Miguel Martins. You hear him in the background there. That's actually Nick Babin, the next car on the road behind, but behind him is Martins. 1.2 seconds to the good now. He's going to be getting a tow from the back of Babin, of course, through the Comrade and down into the chase they go. Running on board here, of course. Got to make sure you get the car drawn up. All of a sudden, you've got an extra 5 kph than what you normally would, all over the grass. You can see how much that unsettles the car, and Babin, with a much cleaner exit, of course, just draws away. So blue flags will be shown. Meanwhile, Raphael Huell for Team Blaupunkt is coming under fire from another rebound racing car, this time Joe Dorber in the 777, and he's got Christian Lindgren just behind as well. Of course, these aren't for category honours as such, but they are, of course, for overall point scoring, and Huell needs to score as much as he can tonight to see can, of course, best and as Rodriguez to the silver title. And Les Stevenson in the background getting involved with Richard Phillips side by side. Of course, the Wonderbread car, fantastic livery, and tucking in behind Richard Phillips. That is a face you don't want to be seeing, Jesse Lee.
Incorrect. That is a face I want to see right there. That is a face of a man who knows how to get it done on the racetrack, and what a lovely human being is Les Stevenson. But yeah, of course, if you are John Eraser, maybe not quite so much as, or excuse me, if you are Richard Phillips, that is not quite so much, because that means you're behind them. But that is absolutely a face that you want to see. Juan Pablo Ordonez has completed their stop. Remember, or not stop, so to speak, a drive-through penalty, of course, out of position on the start. So often we see that in the back of the field. We don't normally see the leaders get caught up in that. But what happened, just to explain, ACC determines a space that your car has to be in, and it's shown to you on the screen, basically a bar graph and a sort of a slider, if you will. You've got to stay within that space on the start. Oh my goodness, completely off the racetrack. I think that was Schumann there, completely off of the track. But you got to stay within this allotted space. Everybody has one at the start, as we're going to see Benjamin Schumann here. What facilitates this? He's pretty okay there as far to the well as you can on just offline there. Not quite as far to the inside as you want to be through the end of the park section coming through Skyline, and that's exactly what happened to him. Went off into the dirt. We're completely honest, that's the best case scenario, but the leader in AM class is riding a bucking Bronco down through the chase this time, and it's gone all completely wrong. They were in 10th. They've dropped way down below that. 13th, 14th place was their contact that led to this.
Any assume we said it earlier, didn't we? Roma Geiken with the bump on the inside. This time, John Racer on the bump, and the car, instead of turning to driver's right, just went straight. But yeah, very good save to keep it out of the concrete wall. And obviously a long travel through the old gravel trap puts him back down to P13. Of course, lost a couple of places. Kevin Boss to the lead of Am, and this time Mike Redford in second, but Roscam isn't going to take that one line down. He wants that position back. He's going to go to the outside on Mountain Straight. Of course, not where you want to be for Griffin's Bend, as we said on the opening lap. Around the outside here is very tricky to do. Redford has the favoured side of the road. The cabin side, it's going to suck his car through, and Roscam has to back out a little bit and tuck back into line for the cutting uphill. Of course, double left-hander, 2 apexes. As you said, Jesse Lee, it's a very hard place to get a move done, especially when you have a small gap between you. But all the meanwhile, Matthew Kingsley with front row seats to the fight, and this is going to be a very good one indeed. If Roscam's sensible, he'll hold off through the mountain, Jesse, and he'll use the toe down the Conrod. And I don't know if he'll be deterred going side by side into the chase, but time will tell in a couple of minutes' time.
Got the best last name in sim racing. He's got the best seat in the house to this fight for second place in the silver category. And this is all music to Kevin Boss's ears, who has driven away now. Remember, they had converted the pass to second place on Redford before that incident with the about Roscam happened. Now Roscam is trying to get by Redford again, down to 13th place. Boss up inside the top 10. They're just trying to drive away just a little bit, and certainly helping with the other two cars in his class closest to him fighting over one another. Let's reset you. Nico Kumpu leads the race and has very small, but I would say healthy gap to Miguel Martins and Rafael Huell in third place. Those are the top two in the silver class right behind him, and I do mean right behind is the Rebound Racing car of Joe Dauber, trying to outrun Lindgren in the 48, who I thought had a good shot at setting on pole here today. They find themselves in the top 5 nonetheless and on the pro podium. Jake Boswell right behind this group, of course, but it is a massive group, all in a line here. The top 5 cars, one car after another, with only about 3 or 4 car lengths in between each of them. One little mistake here, John, is going to be the difference between leading this race and being 5th.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the mentality, isn't it, of one make racing. We saw it in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo Cup. We've seen it, in the Porsche Cup cars and in the Ginettas, of course, just a few seasons ago. One small mistake and that's it. The train swallows you up. You just lose position after position. It's hard to get yourself back into line. It's hard to defend from, obviously, charging cars that then have the legs on you into a corner. So you don't just lose one position, like you say, Jesse. You could set to lose 3, 4, maybe even 5 positions. And of course, if somebody can see a gap and they can capitalize on it, they're certainly going to be going for moves this afternoon. Of course, only 48 minutes on the clock. It's a 1-hour sprint race with a mandatory pit stop. A couple of cars, I think Roscam grazed the BP Ultimate signage there across the top of the mountain. That was through Reed Park and Quarry Corner. Getting very, very close indeed. And we said in the World Tour, didn't we, Jesse, where you kind of get almost mesmerized and fixated by the car ahead. You drive in a trance-like state, and then before you know it, the car ahead's a little bit further to the left than you expect, and before you know it, your car is then following suit, and into the wall Roscam goes. So could have picked up some side damage on that car.
Driving in some of these tire tracks is a double-edged sword. If you trust them enough, then yeah, you can maybe pick up and learn a few things, but you get into that trance-like state where you're just following the car in front of you, and then all of a sudden maybe they do something unexpected, or you're sort of lulled into a false sense of security. You can't do what they're doing. Maybe you didn't set up your corner like they were doing, and you're offline, but you're still trying to follow them and maintain the gap. Then you go out the track. We saw that with Schumann earlier. That can happen with just about anybody. Going back in the chat, looking at some of the message, Miguel Martins wanted to make this a winner-take-all here today. And of course, Miguel thinks that now, leading this race in the silver class. Unfortunately, there's been a whole season up to this point, Miguel, that will determine the winners of the championship, but still trying to be a winner today. Some comments on the opening incidents. Bailey commenting on Reno Ritchie starting in the back says that's why you qualify. And yeah, well, you can certainly avoid incidents like that, or you have a chance of avoiding them, of course. Jay Bubbins has said that the cars look evil. Yep, I'm glad that comes across on the television screen because they are not the evil cars. So many of these drivers make this look so easy and effortless, but I'm telling you, these are some very tricky cars to handle. Super hard, too, to get back in line when they get out of sorts. And that's what made Roskam's save so impressive to me. Riding that bucking Bronco completely sideways, able to not even loop the car, but get it back under control. That is so hard to do on the tarmac, let alone in the dirt. Mike Redford gets a little all over the curb and has to counter steer there. Something else that looks really routine, but is actually quite difficult indeed, as Redford runs wide there, but no lane for do anything. And it looks like Ted Edwards said, this looks like the M25. Yep, M25 rush hour. You do mind the temporary speed limits as well for that. And apparently, she has some words for Ted, and I think I figured out what he's talking about. I think he's talking about rain.
Quite possibly. And of course, big thank you to Ash as well for the £5 dono. Mr. Dalton, you know what this is for, and I do indeed. Some RCI law, a bit of an inside joke going on in the staff channel today. Of course, back to the action tonight. Roman
No. The race can wait. Go on.
No, it can't. The race is here. The race is here and now.
Yeah,
Jesse
the race is here. The dono's here. $5 from Ash Bibby to Mr. Dalton. You know what it's for. I want to know what it's for.
I know what it's for, Jesse Lee. You were there. You were in the staff Discord. You know what's going on. Basically, Ash earlier had a bit of trouble with his car, so he was playing the RCI intro music in his car, waiting to go into work. And I ironically jested with him. Of course, my typical intro is good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you are in the world. I hit him with a welcome back to his employer name. I'm your lead partsman, John Dalton. Alongside me is Ash Bibby and Jesse Lee behind the counter. Not forgetting, of course, our live customers. Welcome, everyone. And apparently that made Ash's day. Of course, never good when you have car trouble. So a little pick-me-up for Ash and £5 in the kitty for RCI server costs as well, which is always great to have. So that's the reasoning behind the dono, should we say, Jesse Lee.
Yeah, it's fantastic. We do thank Ash, of course, for his continued help here, and he's already paid for a season's worth of servers. That's why season 16 of Night Owl will be brought to you in some part by Ash Bibby, and that will be part of the stream, and we're going to open up that quite soon. So if anybody donates over the course of any duration of time, about 50 USD worth of donations, that can be subscriptions to the YouTube channel, subscriptions to Twitch, of course, super chats in YouTube, etc. Anytime anyone amasses 50 USD or thereabout 50 USD, they earn the right to have a championship, an upcoming championship, a weekly series named in their honor as the sponsor of that series, pending staff approval here at RCI. That's incredible. Ash started it, and now it's officially a thing. Speaking of officially a thing, Juan Pablo Donez able to make the move on Kingston Lee for 14th place. So think about that, John, for a second. Everybody that watches at home, 50 USD, a cumulative, and it's going to be an incident. Roman Geiken's going to be spun. It looked like Redford overran Murray's corner. There could be more to that story for the Mike Racing 95, but it's an incident nonetheless. Mike slowing down. He's waiting here as if admitting fault, but that was a scary moment. Came in there like a jump scare.
Yeah, it looked a little bit hot, didn't it? And I know it's spooky season at the moment, but that's the last thing you want to see as you come into Murray's corner. Yeah, it looks like he's just maybe outbroke himself, Mike Redford, into Murray's corner. No kind of, malice behind it, should we say. Pulled way over to the left on start-finish and let Roman Geiken back through to, of course, continue the battle. But going to be a little bit of damage on those cars, of course. Diffuser for Roman Geiken, so the rear end isn't going to be the most pretty. And Of course, Mike Redford's front end is going to be suffering with a little bit of turning as well, but well avoided to everybody chasing in the pack, of course, and the fight shall resume. But stewards, of course, will have a look at that incident. We do have a team of live stewards tonight, and of course, it's a big thank you to those guys for taking some time out of their evening to provide such a service. And again, I say it every broadcast, if you want to get involved with us here at RCI, we do have a staff vacancies board at the moment in the Discord server. You can find a link in the description below. Head on over to staff vacancies. It's about halfway down the list. We do have roles open for commentators, broadcasters, and stewards. So mainly stewards and broadcasters, I think we're chasing at the moment, because you can never have enough stewards. And of course, the more broadcasters we have, the more action we can bring you here on RCI TV. And of course, full training will be provided from our kind of seasoned veterans of the staff roster. You won't just be thrown in at the deep end and expected to perform. Coach you along the way and see if we can get you into your ideal role. And of course, head on over to the Discord to check that one out. Meanwhile, tonight, of course, Nico Kumpu and Miguel Martins at the helm of the field. Joe Dorber in third for Rebound Racing. He's coming under pressure from Raphael Huel in the team Blaupunk car, and Christian Lindgren for Sim Brothers just behind him as well. 5.5 seconds nearly to the good. We'll find Jake Boswell, 2.8 seconds. There's Stevenson. Richard Phillips down in P8. John Eraser, 5.5 seconds to the good again. And then we find our very own Kevin Boss in P10 leading AM. And I don't want to curse him too early, but this is a great performance so far from the Dutchman.
Roscombe has caught up, though, unfortunately, with the Redford incident and all of that. Roscombe's been able to make their way back up. It was 3 seconds or so. The gap to Boss to Roscombe now is down to about a second, but catching him is one thing, passing quite another here at this circuit. Roscombe going to eventually get there, but will they be able to make it work? Speaking of making it work, this is very scary through the park section. Will they sort it out? They will do. And that was both drivers using a little bit of common sense and a little bit of common courtesy is the only way that the both of them survived that interaction. Good job to Huel and Lindgren, because most of the time that ends in absolute fury and disaster, but they were able to make that work and sort it out amongst themselves. For Lindgren, it didn't come off, the move that is, but they live to fight another day, and that's oftentimes more important than anything else. Looking off the rear wing of the Wheelie Slow Racing 31 back at Theobald Roscombe, and that is Ordonez in the background as well behind the bright blue car. Now on board the Odox Motorsports 221, kind of sizing up the competition right now, trying to figure it out. Of course, Ordonez sat on the pole. We know he has the speed. Would like to get back up there into the top 5 and race his own class right, salvage something out of the day, but also you got to be respectful. This is Boston Roscombe. This is for #1 in AM. He'll be aware of that as well. That's why you're not quite seeing as much imminent pressure, hoping that they sort it out amongst themselves so he can get by as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and side by side, of course, into Murray's corner, Roscam and Kevin Boss go. Juan Pablo Ordonez has managed to close the gap up already just by one corner, going side by side, and he's looking to try and split them up the middle into turn 1 almost. You see the headlight looming between the pair, and Roscam with a better run, but he gets oversteer on the exit of Hell corner, and that's going to allow Ordonez with a run past through Roscam as well, side by side. Into the next corner they will go, but I think Roscam will probably get the move kind of backed out a little bit early so he can take the favoured racing line, and Kevin Boss lives to fight another day with the AM lead briefly. But Roscam is looking very quick indeed. I just want to touch on, of course, Tim Ireland. Before we touch on that, Tim Ireland with some big damage down the Conrod Straight. Looks like he's all alone, nobody really around him in the number 141 Delic baby, of course, the Austin Powers themed livery for Tim Ireland this season, done by our very own Phil Roberts, I believe, on that one. But just want to touch on, of course, iRacing, the race replay here. This is the overtake, I believe, on Kevin Boss. Boss had a big wiggle into the cut, and yeah, nearly lost the rear end of the 992. Managed to hold it, but of course Roscam's going to be pressuring him now over the mountain, and hopefully Kevin Boss can absorb all of that. But that, of course, allows Juan Pablo Ordonez out to P11. Yeah, best case scenario, of course, plenty of clear air, and that allows Kevin Boss to then focus with Roscam on his own fight and forget about the pro car with such good pace. Just want to touch on iRacing, of course. Those of you that are regular to RCI TV know we've been shouting about iRacing from the rooftops as the pit window opens. Nico Kumpu out of the lead. He's down in P5 with some front end damage as well, spotted by our broadcaster Stewie. So he's had an incident. Race of attrition. We said it earlier, didn't we, Jesse? Of course, it's all about keeping your car clean here tonight. And Nico Kumpu, unfortunately, unable to do that. So dropped a few positions and a bit of time in the pit stop as well, I can imagine. But we've been shouting it from the rooftops. Of course, we're back iRacing. And we've already begun, I believe, with the Formula V 1600 last week at Virginia. And we have a plethora of events coming up on the calendar, beginning, of course, the Legends Cup this week on October 19th. And I've driven that car in iRacing many moons ago when iRacing was kind of first on the scene. And it was a very fun car back then. I can only imagine how fun it is now. Of course, October 19th, we begin that one. We then head, or stateside, should we say, for the Charlotte 150 on October 28th, where we practice turning left multiple times over a race. And then, news from Jesse Lee. Hold that thought, Jesse. Lastly, of course, we've got some good old multi-class in the form of iRacing Road Championship, of course, with the GT4 and MX5 Cup both mingling on circuit, and that takes off on November 9th. So plenty of iRacing content to get your teeth stuck into. I think there's some discount codes still going over in the Discord. 3 months for 12 USD, I believe, and a year for around 50 USD. And again, all the cars and tracks we choose in the championship are open to the regular subscribers, should we say, of iRacing. No need to buy additional content for cars and tracks. So get your teeth stuck into something new, of course, as ACC begins to wind down for the season. iRacing will begin to fire up. So still plenty of events here to have at RCI. But Jesse Lee, over to you in the news corner for the Charlotte 150.
Yes, indeed. The Charlotte 150, as it stands right now, ladies and gentlemen and others, that will be live streamed. I think I have secured broadcasting for the Charlotte 150. If you haven't signed up for it now, I don't care. Talking directly out here at home. I don't care how quick or slow you think you are. It is pro stock cars. Oh, as Mike Redford has got it all wrong in turn number 2. Take a look at this real quick. We'll get back to the iRacing conversation. And something's wrong with that car, clearly. Something amiss with Mike Redford's car. Thought maybe they were off by themselves, and they technically are, but they're having to stop. We saw them get going again. They've had to refire or reconnect something. Car is now going under its own steam, but a mechanical issue there with the Mike Racing car led them to momentarily coming to a stop. But back to the iRacing Charlotte 150. I don't care what your skill level is, what you think you are good at. It's oval racing. It's a pro stock car. Roman Geiken's off again. Doesn't matter, because those cars draft like super speedway cars. All you got to do, and I'm not kidding, be able to hold the throttle. Now, that was very strange, wasn't it? Hold the throttle a bit, let off a bit to keep from wrecking other people, and turn the car left. If you could do those things, join the Charlotte 150 here at RCI. RaceRCI.com. Get all the information of how to get involved with that. We're going to call it live here on RCI right at the moment. That is what we're going with. We want to have you there for that race. I want to call you in a race, in my home race, home track. John, I'm excited. Can you tell?
I can tell you're very excited, of course, for the Charlotte 150, and so am I. Especially if it's going to be streamed, of course, on RCI TV, and it'd be great to see a few new names on the broadcast, as well as those names we recognize from GT Racing. It's going to be a bit of a different kettle of fish for some drivers, of course, only turning left every lap rather than turning left and right, and of course, just, you know, bump drafting each other, maybe pushing each other along and working together. Could see yourself towards the front of the grid. So certainly get your name down for that one. Of course, Legends Cup, it starts this week, October 19th, and then November 9th, of course, GT4 and MX5 Cup. So plenty of iRacing action to be had, and there's plenty of ACC action as well this week. Flight calendar breakdown, of course, the Wednesday's Team Championship finishes up this week in Spa. Last time out, of course,
also
RCI
streamed.
Esports. It also streamed. I was getting to that. That was going to be in my later half, but RCI Esports Yellow took victory from MRT KTM and Ground Zero Racing. RCI Esports Yellow lead MRT KTM and RCI Esports Blue in points. all separated by just 21 points. So Wednesday is going to be one of those races to watch. Thursday this week begins yet, of course, the iRacing Championship with the Legends car. Sign up still open for that one. So get your name down as soon as possible. Friday also sees our GT Sprint Challenge finish up at Donington Park. Romano Berenik beating Christoph Verstappen and Zoran Zonjic in Pro. Meanwhile, Ted Edwards fended off Richard Whittle and Stefano Ricciardo in silver. Championship overall still led by Christoph Verstappen in Pro and Snooty McFlood in silver. As we catch a race replay here of Benjamin Schumann turning right on a left-hander. Just lost the rear into the Forest elbow, and unfortunately doesn't know whether to try and go forwards and spin it round or reverse it back down the track and whip a J-turn on the Comrade, but he has escaped to the pits and taken the toe instead. So very awkward there. And Saturday Night Owl this week also finishes up at Hungaroring. Jordan Daly beating Timothy Flamger and Harry Conway last time out in Pro. And meanwhile, Mike Redford fended off Inigo Lopez 0.2 seconds to the good from Vex Moondog in silver. Jordan Daly, of course, leads Pro, while Roman Fraller leads silver going into the final. So plenty of action here at RCI this week. I've seen Jay Bubbins in the chat reckon he's not fast enough for Night Owl, but it's, of course, the last round of the season. So why not get your name down, have a little taste of what it's like, and next season maybe sign up
Callum
for the
Kerrigan
calendar.
and Jordan Daly doing our job for us, getting Bubbins to sign up. Can you believe that? We don't have to do that. That's what we're for, but they've done our job for us. We might as well hire them on.
I think we should hire them maybe both as permanent staff members. But yeah, of course, get your name down for any of the events. You can catch them all over on the website racerci.com, where you can, of course, put your name down and get pre-qualified if required for any of the events. And of course, a massive thank you to those at home, not just Jordan Daly, on that one for promoting RCI events, but everybody, of course, whether you're watching along live, you watch back the broadcast, it's great to have you here, and thank you so much for joining us on the journey here at RCI and being a part of it. And none of it, of course, would be possible without the fantastic drivers we have signing up for the event. So do get your name down and do get involved. And of course, a big thank you to our partners. Catch them down the bottom left-hand side even of the screen. Of course, Cycling Round, AK Esports, for providing our server solutions here, but they do offer many other services, especially in the esports world. Driver61.com, of course, 25% off your driver coaching if you are booking through our link here at RCI. Fanatec, again, needs no introduction to their hardware. If you are looking to pick up any hardware over the holiday season that is, of course, coming up or going into the new year, be sure to use our affiliate link down below so we get a little bit of coinage from your purchase from Fanatec. And of course, a couple of new partners for 2023, digitalmotorsports.com, offering everything from corporate events to sim racing hardware, complete sim rig solutions. It's founded in only 2018 by two enthusiastic motorsports fans. They had a vision to create Ireland's leading digital motorsport environment and resource. So be sure to check them out in the link down below. And of course, Go Setups, formed to be one of the premium esports setup stores for ACC, with their primary aim to create setups for all skill levels, whether you're esports ready or looking for a safer alternative for your favorite car. And I can assure you that a few drivers tonight will be running their setups for the 992. And fantastic camera work from Stewie as we switch from the rear of Kevin Boss's car to the front of Rosscamp's car. This battle, Jesse Lee, still very much alive. Kevin is clawing on to this AM lead, and I'm surprised at how much he's absorbing all the pressure.
I'm not surprised he's absorbing the pressure. What I am surprised about is Roskam has not really gotten too aggressive to this point. I think obviously after the pit stop, I think Theobald was kind of hoping that maybe Boss would have a slower stop or they'd be able to execute strategy to get in front of him. That hasn't happened. What has happened is Boss has done a really good job defending. Even when Boss has had little bobbles, it hasn't mattered for the reason that we explained earlier. It's such a tight racetrack. Unless you get a super run out of Forest Elbow, which is where we're coming at right now, and get a run into the chase, just really can't do anything with it. It's going to take a big mistake at the end of Sector 3 or the beginning of Sector 1 for Boss to allow Roskam through, because Boss might be slower than Theobald Roskam, but it isn't enough to really matter. Theobald's going to have to get a run through here that isn't blocked, by Boss. Boss took a sort of a middle of the line approach right there. Didn't go full defensive mode because he wasn't quite close enough, was Roskin, but that's kind of what this is turning into. This may end up being a lunge at the end for Roskin. It will be what he thinks it is worth. Of course, many of the drivers have already done their pit stops today as Ross came up the inside of Hell Corner, and unfazed is Kevin Boss in the wheelie slow 31. Boss able to not only reaffirm that they're leading, they took a little bit of time back with them because of the very sharp angle that Roscom had to take. Nick Babin, the fastest car on the racetrack, has the fastest lap of the race in the 41. They still have a pit stop left to give, though, and they were involved in that turn one, or that turn 3, lap 1 incident entering the cutting. Joe Dauber leads, but is in the pit lane. The 2 cars up there still have yet to pit. The silver leading Jake Boswell with Matthew Easton Lee. Everybody else at the sharp end has completed their stop. Miguel Martins is the big surprise, leading overall now over Christian Lindgren. Those are your top 2. Raphael Huell, Les Stevenson, the next few, and Richard Phillips in 8th place. Be almost certainly bumped up at some point. My question now becomes, what happened to Nico Kumpu to put him in the position he is? Obviously, the car was quite damaged. He had to come in and serve that stop, and rather unfortunately, that has demoted him all the way back to on the area where Nick Babin is.
Yeah, very unfortunate.
Oh, could this be it?
This could be it, possibly side by side. Down the Conrod nearly for Kevin Boss and Roscam. This could be the move that, of course, takes the AM race lead. From Kevin Boss. Although both cars still, both cars have pitted. I'm in completely a world of my own as Kevin Boss on the bumpy side of the road gets pinched a little bit by Roscam into the chase. Both drivers pulling up just about in time. Kevin Boss nearly going for the old up and under, trying to undercut Roscam on the exit of the chase as they begin the run to Murray's Corner. Of course, a very short run. Can you get both cars drawn up in time? Yes, they can. And of course, they've now got Menes Rodriguez just behind after his pit lane start, but not feeling too good. He's clawing his way back up into the top 10. Of course, silver points on the board for him. Kevin Boss very late on the brakes, got super close to Roscam, but Roscam with a much cleaner run out of the corner. Of course, we'll see him propel himself much faster down the mountain straight towards turn 2. And as Rodriguez, of course, just lurking in the background, and Matthew Kingston Lee has just come out ahead of his pit stop. So if Kingston Lee's taking tyres, they're going to be very, very cold for the first few laps. And that means that Kevin Boss is going to catch with a mistake from Boss. Looks like he didn't check up in time, and Roscam just took avoiding action from running up the back of Roscam. I'd love to get a replay of what happened there, but looks like the rear of the really slow racing team just broke away. Let's have a race replay, Jesse.
Let's see exactly what happened. You saw the close contention. Kevin Boss was in for P1 even after Roscam completed the pass. It just looks like Boss drove as close as he could to the back of Roscam, but maybe got a little in too over his head, too deep into the corner. Could have been aero wash as well a little bit. It certainly looked like Boss's car was turning enough to make that corner one way or another. He could have just scared himself with how close he was getting to the back of Roscam and ended up ditching the car one way or another. Heavy damage for the driver who qualified just about top 3 and has ran better than that all day long, but it's all come undone here. There's still P2, but that's significant damage. Mike Redford has a 15-second penalty as well. Speaking of, here are the penalty reports that we have thus far from the race. Slips of paper being handed out by Grim today. Warning for car 141 for a yellow flag infringement on lap 1, turn 3. Racing incident between the 911, the 23, and the 141. Cars do not have time to react to the pileup. Racing incident between the 41 and the 23. Still lap 1, turn 3. Cars do not have enough time to react either. 5-second penalty for car 222 for avoidable contact with car 911 in the 22nd corner. Lap racing incident between the 96 and the 699. Either driver at fault. Bump on the track caused the unexpected movement. 15-second penalty for car 95. That's Mike Redford for a takeout position not returned on the 127 on lap 8. And a racing incident for minor contact between the 221 and the 127.
Yeah, some very fair penalties being handed out there. Of course, Mike Redford, saving grace for Kevin Boss is that 15-second penalty. So all Boss really has to do is keep it on the straight and narrow and just kind of, keep it out of trouble, keep it out of the wall, and just nurse it to the finish. Les Stevenson coming under pressure from a charging Richard Phillips behind. He's got Juan Pablo Ordonez just behind him as well in the 2-2-1. Of course, Silva and Pro once again going at each other. And despite the silver denotion in their pace and their classes, Jesse, they've certainly given the pro guys a run for their money here at the Mountain, a circuit that we said would be notoriously difficult and very hard to navigate for some of the best drivers on the field. Turns out some of the middle ground drivers, should we say, have found it even easier, maybe.
Well, I was going to say this earlier on, but we didn't have the time. Everything's just been kicking off left, right, and center. But there is some speed involved with how you're classified pro, silver, and AM, of course. There's also another part of it that we don't really talk about all the time. And one of the parts is the difference between a pro driver is they make less mistakes than a silver driver most of the time. Tim Ireland, as if on cue, backwards into the wall. He comes through the cutting. Everything's fine there. Does he catch the curb in the park section here, I wonder? And ping pong off the wall. And that might be... Nope, he doesn't do any of that. He just loops it into Solman and into the wall. Luckily, able to pull that car a little bit further off of the road. Luckily, nobody coming in that section. But that's sort of the difference, too, is yes, there's a pace thing there. But in addition to it being pace, there's also consistency. It's just today, Miguel Martins is on it, despite the fact that they're silver. They've not made mistakes. And as you said, every single pro driver in front of Miguel has made a big mistake that's led them to being in front.
Yeah, absolutely so. And meanwhile, Mendes Rodriguez making up a few more positions along his crusade towards the front, but Richard Phillips looking very close now behind Les Stevenson. He's going to have a full view of the face of Les across the back of his own car as they rise through, of course, the top of the mountain down towards the latter half of the descent, where they begin through Skyline, the S's, and of course the Dipper, where the road essentially falls away under the front left tire of the car and kind of jump the car almost through this section. Ordonez still behind. He's looking very patient. Doesn't want to make any kind of sudden moves or late lunges, of course. He wants probably to let these guys maybe fight out ahead of them to see if he can sneak on past while they're busy going side by side through a corner, maximize an exit, and see if they can, of course, get themselves back through towards the front of the grid. Of course, Ordonez, just to remind you if you are wondering why the Spaniard has slipped so far down, a drive-through penalty at the beginning of the race offset him from everybody else. Meanwhile, Matthew Kingston Lee, touch there. That was with one of the Rebound Racing cars, maybe Nico Kumpu. He's down in that area. No, it's Roscam, actually. I stand corrected. The number 96 Rebound Racing entry, of course, the Belgian driver on his crusade towards the front of the AM category as well. Mendes Rodriguez, of course, ahead of him now with Roscam and Matthew Kingston Lee just behind. Richard Phillips, still nothing to be done down the Conrod through the chase. He still remains in line of stern with Les Stevenson. But Ordonez very late on the brakes, nearly ran up the back of Richard Phillips. And again, I know it's spooky season, Jesse Lee, but we don't want any jump scares here today.
Certainly, you don't want to have that on the mountain. You don't want to have that here. Nico Kumpu trying to make a move on Kevin Boss here. Goes down to the inside. Does Kumpu the 256? Like Boss just gets out of the way and obliges that move being made. Of course, Boss did not pit, by the way. Remember the incident that Kevin Boss had where he completely demolished the wall in turn number 2? He hasn't pitted now. He still runs in second place. He's got about 20 seconds on Mike Redford, who also has that 15-second penalty. So it's a bit more than 20 seconds. You would argue it's 35 seconds of a gap Kevin Boss has back to P3. But you wonder if that was the about Roscam that put Matthew Kingston Lee in the wall. That is that could potentially end up being a penalty in its own right. And if Roscam does get a 5-second penalty or such, that's going to be right about the amount of time Kevin Boss is behind Roscam right now. That could be potentially dangerous to Roscam winning this race in the AM class.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, Roscam McCain has great pace on him for the events he has shown up for, of course. Maybe needing to push himself into the silver category by how strong he has commanded some of the events he has turned up for. But Of course, Richard Phillips now with maximum draft on the back of Les Stevenson. Les kind of tries to cover off the middle of the road very fairly, sends Phillips to the outside for the beginning of the chase, but that's, of course, going to become the inside once they get on the brakes, and Phillips has just about got a nose ahead, but he backs out, takes the curb. Very respectful racing, and Les Stevenson's all over the exit curb, and Phillips tries to sweep around the outside, and he's been turned into driver's right. Les Stevenson off, and I think Jake Boswell involved in that one as well. Meanwhile, Ordonez picked his way through the middle of it all, and somehow Jake Boswell's taken away 2 positions as well from Les Stevenson and Richard Phillips, despite, of course, maybe picking up some damage on the number 47. But in that in V8 Supercars, Jesse Lee, it just happens. That's, you know, a textbook move. I guarantee you, go on YouTube, look up a Bathurst crash compilation, and you will see exactly this. A driver gets a faster run around the outside of the chase exit, and of course, the car for Les Stevenson, although he's turning right, the front end is pushing out to the left naturally. You can't crank on any more lock because you will end up essentially understeering into the opponent anyway. So you've almost got to lift a little bit out of the throttle just to allow the car to swoop around the outside of Richard Phillips. Unfortunately, coming worse off there, down into P9. Of course, lost the position from Les Stevenson. John Aracer has even slipped through at some point as well, I believe. And Jake Boswell, of course, just behind Ordonez in P6. So big loss there for the number 20, 22 and 46.
I'd love to see that from Richard Phillips's camera, because it's quite strange. It looked like there was enough room there left by Les Stevenson, and Phillips, it just looks like he turned himself off of Les's nose. Here it is. This is the in-car cam from Richard Phillips, and oh, it's just so strange. I don't know. We saw it from the overhead cam. We saw it from the in-car Les Stevenson, and now Richard Phillips, and it's just so inconclusive. I thought maybe Phillips just was on the curb and turned hard right. I could have sworn from the overhead cam there was enough room, but apparently there was not. Several cars involved. Benjamin Schumann's had a third incident. They're all alone here. There's a bump there, of course, but this just running a bit wide. Here it is, not getting on the brakes correctly, dipping one tire off into the dirt. That's a death sentence here. The chase and hard into the wall. I do believe Benjamin Schumann is going to call that a day, and indeed a championship. But yeah, that incident between Stevenson and Phillips, that's so strange. It looked like Phillips was going to pull clear, but just got tagged enough. But who that's on is by me. I have no idea. Meanwhile, this isn't over up front. It is still brewing between Miguel Martins and Joe Dauber. Dauber, for his pride alone, would like to get by Miguel Martins. Of course, they're all given points in class and overall as well. If Martins was able to win this race outright, it would boost him in the overall standings quite well. But for the class championship, this doesn't matter for the rebound racing driver. But at this point in the championship, at this point in the race, at this point late in the series, it does mean a lot to Joe if he's able to get up there and pass Miguel Martins and win this race overall as a pro driver. And if there's one thing I know about racing drivers, John, very prideful bunch.
Yeah, a very prideful bunch indeed, and racing, you know, is a confidence game at the end of it. And if you can walk away from the Porsche Cup car with at least one win under your belt, you're going to feel very ecstatic about how you progressed through the season. Of course, we began the season with of course pre-qualifying, which I myself took part in. Out of 42 drivers that managed to complete it, I finished P20 overall, so nearly slap bang in the middle. Joe Dauber, of course, at the top at the moment, P2. He pre-qualified in P16 overall, and of course Miguel Martins at the helm of the field. He qualified even lower than myself on P23, and he's currently, of course, leading at one of the ACC's most trickiest circuits. So, they started off kind of in the midfield, each of them, and they progressed their way through, of course. See drivers progress, and we see it all the time here at RCI, where certain drivers sign up, they pre-qualify, it's a lower category, maybe they're in AM, maybe they're in silver, maybe they're in split 2, they don't even make the broadcast for the first season. And then obviously with a bit of progression, racing people, learning, understanding the game and progressing yourself through, you find your way up into the pro category, split 1, and then find your way onto RCI TV. So what more great things do you want from us here? So if you want to get involved, you're debating it at home and you're thinking, I don't know if I can compete. There is a skill level for you, there's a split for you, there's a category for you. That is exactly why we do pre-qualifying, so nobody is essentially left out. Look at the AM guys today. They've been having fantastic battles up and down the grid and even getting involved with some of the silver guys, and the silver guys getting involved with the pro guys. It's, crazy to have 3 classes on the circuit. Again, get your name down, get involved at racerci.com, and I promise you'll have a fantastic time. And it's where I started before I started broadcasting with you, Jesse. Of course, I was a member of the community. I signed up for races, made into invite split 1, split 2 occasionally, and now I find myself up in the box casted everybody. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great advertisement, John, and it sounds like an advertisement, but it's absolutely true. I mean, I gotta say, most of the people that we surround ourselves up here with, they're racing drivers as well, so they also understand a little bit about that side of it, and then they just sort of make a home here. And was that contact between the two of them? It might have been, as they tried to go through the through Skyline. Looked very squirrely, did Menez Rodriguez at first, and I think just trying to arc it into the corner, made contact with Phillips in front. Further frustrating Richard Phillips today, and further frustrating Michelle Menez Rodriguez for the Sim Brothers Racing. But yeah, I mean, it's a great community to be involved in, and we welcome Bubbins in, who is apparently going to make their debut sometime soon as well. So they were worried about their pace, and I'm going to tell you straight up, Bubbins, I care about your pace. Nobody here cares about what your pace is. It's the taking part, it's the being a part of it that is really important. And I know that sounds, a little. Oh my goodness, Nico Kumpu spinning like a top into the wall here.
Yeah, tried to get past Matthew Kingston Lee into the chase, sent it right up the inside, a little bit too hot on the brakes, had to scrubble the speed off, unfortunately, over the curb, into the grass.
How do you spin backwards like that, John?
Snap back the other way. It's the Porsche pendulum effect, isn't it? The classic annotation of Porsche putting the horse behind the cart, essentially, in olden day times, should we say. Of course, a lot of manufacturers putting the horse in front of the cart, in front of the driver. The sensible place to put it. But Porsche went, nah, you know what? We're going to change that. We're going to put the horse behind the cart and see how that goes.
This has not been an advertisement for Porsche, just so we're clear.
Absolutely so. I mean, it's a hard car to control, and lack of aero, Jesse, had it all season. Tires are going to be at their worst. Fuel load's going to be at its lightest. Drivers again going to be fatigued, tired, especially if they've been up early for real life work commitments, etc. So really struggling tonight, I would say, a lot of drivers. And off into the grass is Richard Phillips, and that allows Roscam to sneak up the inside, and Phillips into the wall. In fact, couldn't get it out of the grass, maybe, or just couldn't get the car turned. Very strange indeed. Let's ride on board. What's the steering wheel motions? Ignore the rearview mirror, because that's of course showing in live time. So hooks it through, clips the BP boarding on the left into the grass, all the way down the wall, very well to avoid bouncing out into Roscam, and scraped it to a finish on the sign event boarding on the right hand side, unfortunately just before McPhillamy Park. So Bathurst claiming yet another victim tonight, Jesse, and such a shame. Of course, 51 minutes into the race, 9 minutes before the end, and all you really had to do was kind of nurse it round to take the checker flag and a small haul of points from what is not maybe your best race on the calendar, but soul destroying, especially towards the end of the race. But we said it earlier, didn't we, Jesse? We said it at World Tour. It's a race of attrition at this circuit, and it's a very hard circuit to conquer, even in the most stablest of cars, let alone in low downforce cup cars such as we have tonight.
For anyone that thought when I said survival was the name of the game, I was embellishing because I'm a broadcaster. No, I'm serious. Everybody comes here with the same mindset. Survive the race, don't get caught up into anything, and hopefully leave in one piece. The problem with that is 2/3 of drivers never actually accomplish that goal. Very, very few do. And by the way, I'm a stats guy. I love stats. For those of you keeping track at home, this is the 4th race in a row here at Bathurst that we've ran, where the leader of the race, the top qualifier, so to speak, pole position, has had an accident. And it's also the 4th race in a row where the leader early on, regardless of where they qualified, usually isn't pole position, by the way, also got involved in an incident. We have more winners from the 3rd and 4th row here than we do the first 2. That is how difficult this place is. You can qualify really well, and still get yourself into trouble. And remember what I said in qualifying? Sometimes being quickest here isn't the best because you're the one that's really pushing the car. You're pushing the limits to get that lap time. Do that in a race, you're just affording yourself more difficulty and more opportunities for incident. And that's exactly what happened here today. It happened the last 4 or 5 times here through the World Tour, through all of the races that we've had on the weekly. A couple of things, just doing some housekeeping from the stewarding box. There was a stop and go 10 issued for car 28 for dangerous driving, ending in a takeout for car 44 in the 464. Leave the multi-car takeout, and that earned them the stop and go. A warning for car 199 for yellow flag infringement. 5-second penalty for the 222 for avoidable contact versus the 911. Racing incidents between the 96 and 699. Some of these might be repeats, so I do apologize. A couple of these were added. There's also a warning for car 96 for a dangerous rejoin on the racing line.
Yeah, a few notable steward offences there, of course. It's great to have them here and, police the race, should we say. They are almost like the sim racing police, as we say sometimes, and, very fairly judged a lot of these incidents. So, again, if you want to get involved with stewarding at RCI and you're curious to the inside world of what goes on with them, we do have a vacancies board, of course, in the Discord, as we said earlier. So head on over there, have a brief read of what you'll be doing, and maybe get involved with Phil Roberts and his team, of course, some of the events we host here. Meanwhile, of course, back to tonight, Miguel Martin's out front. Joe Dorber still trying to chase down the number 62. Lap times looking very equal indeed. Both last time across the line, 204.347 for Martins and a 0.397 for Joe Dorber. That's how small the margins are here in one make racing. Of course, there's a very minor difference in fuel loads, maybe tyre conditions and setup. But other than that, of course, both cars very equal indeed. And Miguel Martins, a Portuguese driver in the number 62, has had a fantastic race so far. Just over 5 minutes, of course, on the clock to go. He's only got a couple more laps around Bathurst before we can draw the checkered flag. I'm not too sure.
Does he know we're talking about him? Is he listening to us while he's driving, Miguel?
I know a lot of drivers do, of course, listen into the broadcast in the car. Mike Redford is one of them as well. So who knows, maybe Miguel Martins has us on somewhere in his either rig or his house somewhere. Maybe somebody's hearing him on from the TV. But it could just be, of course, the sunlight glistening off the front of the car. It's sometimes very hard to tell in ACC with the sunflare effects, of course, playing havoc. But yeah, great to have all the drivers, racing, listening. And I know a lot of the drivers watch back as well, the broadcast, because of course, when you're in your own race, you don't often see what happens to other people. And we sat there wondering, why did we start with 25 cars, but now we've only got 20 cars? What happened along the way? And it was fantastic to see. Roman Gaikin, we said earlier, Jesse, we were riding on board with Nico Kumpu and his qualifying lap, how important it is to keep it out of the wall of the Forest elbow. And exactly that, a small grace for Gaikin. Blew him off into driver's left and clattered down the wall on the Conrad, and big damage on Roman Gaikin's car. Number 16, currently number P16, sorry, the 127 down the back of the field. Not been Roman Gaikin's race, probably one to forget again today, but the mountain claims yet another victim, Jesse, and still just under 4 minutes to go. I'm wondering if anybody else will fall foul of the walls here.
The answer is yes, John. You know the answer is yes. I know you were posing that inquisitively, but I promise you the answer is yes. Somebody else will get into the wall here. It is just there's three things you can count on most times of the year. Rain, the weather changing, and of course the walls here at Bathurst. You can always count a few of those things, and we are not done with it yet with just 3 minutes left to go. Joe Dauber was trying to close the gap. It was as close as a second earlier on. It's 1.5 now. Going to prove to be a gap too big unless Miguel Martins decides to have his first major incident of the day, and I don't see that particularly happening. He's been unflappable until this point. This should be right now 2 laps to go for the DCC Motorsports driver at 62. Might be on his way to overall victory here today. Keep in mind, 4 championships going on at the same time. 3 class championships and the overall championship as well. If you're silver or M and you win overall, and it has happened before, that is major points to you. Miguel will be boosting his position in both the silver and the overall by doing this. Joe Dauber looking to take victory in pro class today and be the only driver that can say they beat Reno Ritchie this season. And we were so close, John. We didn't talk about this at all, really, but we were so close to having a driver complete the sweep, win every round here in the Monday Championship, something that, as far as I know, had never taken place in the Monday slot here at RCI TV. Reno Ritchie had a chance to do that today. He obviously got involved in the lap 1 incident, started from the back anyway. Dauber's going to get credit for the win, and we still haven't had somebody win every round. Just shows you how tough it actually is.
Yeah, I can only imagine, it's going to be possible if Reno Ritchie again qualified for today. Again, it would have kept him out of the lap 1 incident. As incidents, Mike Redford looks like something has happened to him down into the chase. Of course, hard on the brakes, overcooks it. I don't want to stereotype this as a Nico Kumpu move, but very much Nico Kumpu'd it. Overcooked it into the first part and hit the curb. Of course, the grass spun around.
I refuse to accept the new verb of kumpu'd it.
It's going to be a thing at
With
Bathurst.
Apologies to Nico.
If you overcook the first part of the chase on the left-hander, you have kumpu'd it, let's just say. Of course, but spectacular fashion, Nico managed to switching it back on reverse into the tyre wall on the left-hand side. He overcooked it that much, but Redford doing a much less dramatic version, just unfortunately on the grass. Of course, bump upset the car and round he went. But Miguel Martins has began the last lap of the race. Of course, Joe Dauber, 1.5 seconds to the good now. I don't think Dauber has unfortunately got an answer from Miguel Martins. I think the pace of the Portuguese number 62 is just too much for today, and providing he can keep it clean one more time up and down the mountain, could in theory be the race winner. And of course the first different race winner than Reno Ritchie, of course, from the clean sweep you were just talking about, Jesse Lee. Of course, Miguel Martins takes away that title from him and becomes the only silver driver as well to win a race here at the Porsche Cup this season.
Yeah, it certainly will. The only person to best them is going to be Miguel Martins if he can hang on the final lap. The timer has expired. This is the final lap of the race, and DCC Motorsport looking to shock the world again. This is not the first time Miguel Martins has taken overall honors, as far as I'm aware. They've done this before, and how impressive is it? Their championship thus far hasn't been particularly fantastic. They've not even had a podium thus far in this series, but today they are looking to not only take a podium, but the win, and of course the overall win as the cherry on top.
Yeah, absolutely so. And it's going to be a fantastic race to put your name to. Of course, at Mount Panorama, you can confidently say that I won the RCI Porsche Cup in the 992 at the mountain, the hardest circuit, should we say, on the calendar, other than Paul Ricard in the wet, maybe rivaling it this season. But for one last time, of course, through the chase, Miguel Martins shall navigate, followed by Joe Dauber, 1.8 seconds to the good now, so opening up the gap even more on the last lap of the race. Of course, white flag out, down into Murray's they go, a short run to the start-finish line, a little drift from Miguel Martins, and over the line to become your race winner. Of course, Joe Dauber will take pro honours. Christian Lindgren comes through in second in pro and third overall, and Rafael Huel with a well-fought race takes second in silver. Juan Pablo Ordonez, what could have been from pole position. Jesse Lee, and a big slide from him as well out of Murray's corner. Fantastic to see drivers putting on a display here tonight. Meanwhile, Jake Boswell is under pressure actually from John Aracer. This is a fight we've kind of not been really watching or paying attention to, but within nearly half a second, John Aracer, maybe one more lap, and Aracer could have done it in the 699, but Jake Boswell across the line will take third in silver. Flash of the lights there from John Aracer, probably to say GG to Jake Boswell for the clean fight. As a few more cars, of course, streaming past. Les Stevenson brings with him Richard Hutchings, again caught up in the turn 3 incident. Matthew Kingston Lee across the line. Roscam, of course, will be your AM winner tonight, and Kevin Boss, should he navigate Murray's corner very successfully for the last time, will be your second place man in the number 31 Wheelie Slow Racing team. Again, what could have been had the incident not happened, and the slight mistake following Roscam into turn two. And of course, Mike Redford, in theory, should remain your third place man in AM. Nico Kumpu, again, fantastic pace all race, just very unlucky with the walls. And Nick Babin, the number 41, started at the back, of course, with Renault Ritchie. He continued his onslaught even after the incident, will take away the fastest lap of the race. So again, another what could have been. Had Renault Ritchie, Nick Babin qualified, it could have been a very different outcome at the top of the grid. And Mike Redford will be your last car to cross the line. Of course, 15-second time penalty doesn't shuffle him any further down in AM. So he will remain third place in AM. And what a fantastic race, Jesse, from start to finish. And a fantastic season as well. Even though we've had the dominance from Renault Ritchie, we still had some great racing along the way, as I think Stewie is trying to find out what happened here to Nico Kumpu and why he fell so far down, of course, with Miguel Martins just behind him. Possibly found the lap here, of course, a much longer lap coming up next time by. Down Skyline, a bit of a wiggle and slaps the wall and into one wall, bounced onto the other, and that's going to be a big load of damage. Even kissed it in the dipper as well, just from sheer frustration, and even held up his teammate Joe Dorber a little bit. So again, could Dorber have used that little hold up to get past Miguel Martins in the end? That would have been a considerable time loss for Dorber there. But, you know, fantastic scenes across the whole season and across today. And here's your final race results for tonight, of course, on your screen. Silver Car winning over all, of course, Miguel Martins. Joe Dorber taking first place in Pro. Christian Lindgren coming in second in Pro, and Rafael Huel in second in Silver. Ordonez comes third in Pro, despite, of course, the drive-through penalty at the start of the race. And Jake Boswell takes another podium finish, Jesse. He's going to be over the moon, as he was last time out at Paul Ricard, I think, when he got a very strong finish as well. Meanwhile, of course, Roscam takes your AM honours. Kevin Boss in second for the Wheelie Slow Racing Team in AM. And Mike Redford, of course, takes the bottom step of the AM podium. So, you know, you have a fair shot at everything here. And, you know, it's been great racing up and down every single class for the Porsche Cup, Jesse.
Yeah, it certainly was. And just look at how we ended. If we had a picture of how they qualified, this is completely upside down, topsy-turvy from where we started this race. And it was a race of attrition, unlike anything we've seen. I think, John, you and I had it circled on the calendar quite early on that this was going to be a heck of a place for a finale, a tough place for a finale to be. But I don't think even we could have foreseen just how incredibly odd this race was going to turn out. We had several different leaders in the pro category, several different leaders in the AM category. Miguel Martins out of nowhere after sort of an okay season, just coming up, and showing out, winning it overall. Jake Boswell ended the season strong. He had the win and now a P3 as well. Safe to say Jedi Jake is back. I think he's remembered how to drive the car now, cars in general, and he's going to be on it. Hope to see him in more championships. Kevin Boss added a few more trophies to the cabinet, of course, for podiums. Miguel Martins did the same, which is all very good for the drivers that were here. But of course, some very frustrating races for some of the championship contenders. Menez Rodriguez, of course, frustrating day for him. Reno Ritchie, the same thing. And obviously, Jeffrey Miguel Reno Ritchie is your pro champ. But I'm quite curious how close the standings got in silver, with Menez Rodriguez finishing off him in the silver category. I'm quite convinced Mike Redford is your AM champion, regardless of the finish today. Still finished third, even after all of the drama. Just an unfortunate day for him, but some excellent grit to get to where they were. Here it is, the final championship standing, starting off with the pro category. Jeffrey Miguel Reno Ritchie, in no doubt, won this championship after 5 races. He could have not even shown up today, and he would have still won the championship. The driver from Aruba does it, win his first RCI champ that I know of. Christian Lindgren in second place, 225. Nick Babin will take bronze in third place, 214 points to their cause. Klaus Nyring, Nico Kumpu, your top 5. Juan Pablo Ordonez, Joe Dauber, Polyakov, Brocklehurst, and Jordan Daly would be your top 10. Moving on to silver, I was quite curious how close it got, and it did get close. Michel Minez Rodriguez was really close to losing the championship today, but luckily was able to keep the car on the racetrack after starting from the pit lane, saying they didn't feel after being involved in an incident today. They got just enough points, 257, and Minez Rodriguez from Sweden is your silver Porsche Cup champion over Raphael Huell in second place. And in third place, the best last name in sim racing, taking the bottom step of the podium, Matthew Kingston Lee, 198 points. Jake Boswell in fourth place. Wojciech Dvorak is fifth in the championship after falling all the way from second place. Miguel Martins, John Arazer, Richard Phillips, Roman Geiken, and Les Stevenson, top 10 in silver. Inside the top 10, obviously, those drivers getting points still actively involved. Mike Redford, though, does end up winning the AM classification. I didn't think it was that in doubt, and it certainly was in third place, more than enough to secure the British driver the AM championship over Tim Ireland in second, and Martin Foster taking up third place. Richard Hutchinson, Theobald Roskam, your top five. Kevin Boss, Ibiza racer, Callum Kerrigan, Vit Dvorak, Matthew Malcolm, your top 10 in AM.
Been a fantastic season entirely, of course, with the one make theme continuing with Tim Ireland's, of course, favorite method of racing, should we say. It always provides some exciting broadcasting and some very good close racing as well. And Eagle Eye viewers in the Discord will have seen the next championship that Tim is cooking up for you guys. We do take a small break on RCI Mondays. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time on November 6th, where we will be kicking off Ginetta Cup Season 2. We had Season 1 of it. It was very exciting. It was a busy time for the stewards, of course, everybody getting super competitive and kind of elbows out, should we say, in the form of racing, of course, when we introduced the 30-minute sprint races that were abandoned due to the chaos that ensued at round one. I think it was Zolder from the top of my head, but of course we will head back to the Ginettas. Of course, sign-ups are open and pre-qualifying will begin not too in the not too distant future, shall we say. Round one at Mazzano, November 6th is where we'll kick off. We'll head to Kyalami, Watkins Glen, Zandvoort, and the Nürburgring. 1 hour sprint races on the calendar at the moment. Pit stop rule set is still to be decided by Tim. So keep your eyes peeled on the website for that one. Of course, get your names down, get signed up, and get pre-qualified because the Ginetta is a fantastic car and it drives very much like a go-kart. But on your screens now, you will see the Porsche Cup Season 4. This is, of course, the overall standing. So we said it, didn't we? We had the category battles. We then had the overall battles where, of course, Raphael Huell and Menes Rodriguez ended up switching places in the cup. So from the top, of course, Miguel Reno Ricci again, 285 points to the good. Christian Lindgren with 209. Nick Babin and Klaus Nyring ending on a tie with 189 points apiece. Raphael Huell on 168, so he's the first of the silver cars. Nico Kumpu on 150, while Pablo Ordonez with 146. Mitchell Menez Rodriguez with 137, Joe Dorba with 133, and Miguel Martins rounds out your top 10 on 122 points, of course, taking the third spot in the silver class. Matthew Kingston Lee with 116 points, just about ahead of Jake Boswell on 115. Wojciech Dvorak on 107. John Aracer on 98. Richard Phillips, again, what could have been with today's finish had he stuck it out and tired towards the end with 89 points. Roskam, for the small amount of events that he turned up, takes away the overall AM, of course, on the standings with 82 points. Les Stevenson on 80. Mike Redford on 74. Roman Geiken on 65. Yao Manzo on 63. Rounds out your top 20 overall for the Cup. On to the next page, we have a few names to get through here. Benjamin Schumann on 62. Tim Ireland and Polyakov tied on 58. Martin Foster on 53. Kevin Boss just missing out there on 52. Richard Hutchings on 50. And then a big jump back to Ibiza Racer on 27. Vic Dvorak on 19. Callum Kerrigan and Ollie Brocklehurst tied on 17 points apiece. Of course, Brocklehurst we saw at Valencia, even that never saw. So another one race entry as a few of them scattered around the grid, and Brocklehurst rounding out your top 30. Four names possibly come in second. And on to the next page, Matthew Malcolm again. One one race entry. That was tonight, of course, 0 points on there. And then everybody else, of course, signing out and taking no further part. Very unfortunate. Some big names there in RCI, of course, Jordan Daly, Boardman, Shelgren, just to name a few there. They were looking very competitive at the start of the season. And, fantastic to see. Again, absolutely anybody can compete here at RCI, Jesse. We said it earlier on in the broadcast, didn't we? Pre-qualifying is just that, it's to find your feet in the field, to see where you skill yourself essentially, whether it be in pro, silver, or am category for everyone, and of course multiple splits running if enough signups are generated. And speaking of signups, of course, we're going back iRacing. For those of you that weren't here earlier in the race, we do have a few more events yet to come for those. Beginning, of course, this week again, we got a new season starting with the Legends Cup. That's on October 19th. Before we head off to Jesse's home race, the Charlotte 150 on October 28th. Before lastly, we kick off some good old multi-class in the form of iRacing Road Championship. That's with GT Force and MX5 Cups both mingling on circuit. That, of course, begins on November 9th. So, plenty of events for iRacing to take you up to the holiday season. Of course, plenty more ACC events to begin and kick off as well, with a few rounding out this week, Wednesdays and Fridays and Saturdays, all coming to a close this week. We've got Wednesday's Team Championship on RCI TV. I believe the Charlotte 150 on October 28th will be streamed on RCI TV as well. So, plenty of action to come. Of course, remember to hit that subscribe button. Follow us over on Twitch as well, because the big events do reach two audiences, both on YouTube and Twitch with us. And so hit the bell icon, and we appreciate every single one of you that's dropped in, whether it's, you followed the whole season, you've dropped in just for tonight, you're completely new to Pretend Race Cars, and you're wondering what the heck we're doing here tonight, but casting a virtual race. And it's, great to have you on board, and like to continue the journey with you. And of course, our partners that have been with us for a considerable time as well. AK Esports, of course, a leading Italian company in esports management and organization across the world, and also providing our service solution here at RCI. Driver61.com, of course, get 25% off your driver coaching by using our discount code. Link in the description below. From one-on-one coaching to full driving courses, the folks at driver61.com will have something that fits your needs and have helped thousands hone their skills and discover unknown potential. Fanatec, I need no introduction to these guys, of course, one of the leading brands in dedicated sim racing hardware. If you are looking to pick up some new gear along the Christmas season and into 2024, be sure to use our affiliate link down below, which helps us, of course, with some of the running costs we here at RCI. And two new partners for 2023, of course, digitalmotorsports.com, offering a number of products and services from virtual driving experiences, corporate events, an early drive program, esports championships, driver training, simulator components, and even complete SimRig solutions. Founded in 2018 by two enthusiastic motorsport fans, had a vision to create Ireland's leading digital motorsport environment and resource. Visit the link down below if they can help you well. And of course, Go Setups, formed to be one of the premium esports setup stores for Assetto Corsa Competizione, with their primary aim to create setups for all skill levels, whether you're esports ready or looking for a safer alternative for your favorite car. Featuring, of course, a plethora of esports stars on their team, sure the setup you choose has extensive hours behind it, and they've nearly, I think, nailed every single 1.9 update. I think they're onto the GT4s now as well. So if you are looking for setups, that is in their store. So do check them out if you think they can help you. But of course, it's that time, unfortunately, that we do have to say our goodbyes. It's been a fantastic season from us up here in the broadcasting booth. We thank Stewie for his efforts, of course, with the camera work and the stream and everything he does behind the scenes that we don't quite get to see all the buttons being pushed. And of course, myself and Jesse Lee that have brought you all the action through 5 rounds. And of course, a big thank you to the live stewards that have made sure all the drivers stay in check and drive very fairly and reasonably. And of course, if you do want to get involved with us here on the staff team. We do have a vacancies channel in the Discord. So head on over, read a few descriptions of commentator, broadcaster, and steward. And if you do want to get involved with us, email or DM, should we say, the relevant team member in the post and get your name down for some events. Full training provided. Of course, we won't just throw you in at the deep end and see if you can become a member of the RCI team. But of course, from myself, John Dalton, from Jesse Lee alongside me, and of course, Stewie behind the cameras, and all the live stewards and staff behind the scenes at RCI. It's been a fantastic Porsche Cup season. Ginetta Cup will begin on November 6th, and we look forward to seeing you on RCI TV in the near future. Take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful rest of the week, and it's bye bye for now.